Brandon Brands.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Brandon Birkmeyer here, and today we are doing something different, something weird, something strange. We are keeping it real. We're breaking the rules. We're going to go a little bit behind the scenes today and talk about live streaming and what I've been doing to get this stuff up and running. And basically, I'm trying to break the system and break the rules and do things until they work. And I want to show you that so you can see what that's like. Also, go a little bit behind the scenes of personal branding and that journey that I've been on, as well as podcasting and how that's been going and that up and down roller coaster, and coaching, which is the business behind the business and how that's all been working. So, going to be talking about all of that today. And just to make it even weirder, I'm going to be doing it from my phone and walking around and just giving myself the opportunity to be more authentic in an environment that works for me in that way. Because sometimes sitting at this computer doesn't exactly work. So that might affect some of the sound quality today, but I hope you guys will forgive me on that and just roll with it. And feel free to jump in on the comments. Let me know you're listening. Type in hashtag live. And also go ahead and if you have questions or you have comments, just drop them in the comments. I may not see them. I'm only looking at the comments on brandgrowthlive.com, which is the Facebook, the link to the Facebook group where I'm streaming. It's one of the places. So if you're on YouTube and watching, that's fine, but I'm not going to see the comments while I'm talking live. So if you want to interact, go to brandgrowthlive.com where I can see that direct interaction. And then we'll jump into it. And then let me roll that theme music and then I'll switch it up for you guys. All right, check it out.
Brandon Brands.
Look at that. I was on mute the whole time. Maybe you heard me through my other mic, but anyway, I'll say it again. So I switched to my phone view because I want you guys to be able to see and walk around with me today as I talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. And the first thing was making sure that this can work on the computer, which I'm hosting here on the computer, and I am shooting it live from my phone as a guest. So I'm basically guesting myself. So I pushed myself into the stream as a guest. I'm leaving the hosting going on my computer, and hopefully that works. Maybe the sounds are going to be weird. Maybe they won't. I see a few people jumping in here too to watch. So also be a little bit harder to read comments because I got to do it through the phone here and see what people say. But drop me a line so I know I'm not going crazy, and let me know that you guys are watching, that you can hear me and all that stuff. And we'll go from there. Other than that, I just appreciate you guys going on this ride with me, and let's get moving. I think we'll start by just jumping into a little bit of what's going on. So I'm at home. Obviously, I shoot from home, and I shoot right here in my dining room, I guess you could call it. That's the living room over there. And obviously, I'm actually dad solo for the past 3 days. My wife's been on a business trip, so the kids' stuff is all over the place because it's hard to manage without the wifey around. I just shoot right there at the computer. And what's funny, when I first got started podcasting, I got comments about it being distracting having the living room in the background. So after doing that for a little bit, and distracting because I was actually filming video and then streaming that to YouTube, and then pulling the audio from that for podcasting, but that's besides the point. But the comments I got made me go and buy a green screen so that I could film here at the kitchen table, and I would hang the green screen from the curtains over here, and I would film right here at the table. And for my big guests, I still do that, and then I can throw a background up that's virtual so that it's not distracting to the people that had commented on that. So I'm reacting to people as they leave me comments, trying to improve and make sure that the experience is pretty good for the people watching and listening. So that's the first thing. And that's how I got going on that. So the live streaming today, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the format. So I'm working on my format as we speak. I literally have switched it up a couple times. And what I mean is, I'm gonna take you outside for a sec. This is the backyard. This is where all the kids' junk is and where the kids are playing. But when I got started, I was working on the idea of, okay, I'm going to practice a little bit. So I live streamed to my Facebook group only. It's a closed group. I built the group to be a community around my coaching business. So it was entrepreneurs, other people that were looking for marketing advice. And in doing that, I needed a place for them to gather and exchange ideas. So I built the Facebook community. It's called Brand Growth Community. And the live, when I first started doing it, was literally a way to feature them so they'd get to know each other. So I would bring a guest on and they would talk about their business, and we would just kind of chat and get to know each other. And then I might ask them what their marketing challenge was, and then a little bit about like some roses and thorns for that week. So like the wins and the challenges or hurdles that they're facing that week. And that's how I got the live going. So I'd practice there in the Facebook group. And I didn't even have a setup like this where you see the borders of the frame. Thank you, StreamYard, for giving us those tools. It was just literally a couple of screens, and I had to use my phone for that. So I was going picture in picture, and I'd have a little box up here with the guest's face in it. It was tiny, and the rest of it was me. So they're talking, and you're like seeing 90% me and 10% of the guest right there in the box. And that was not the best looking stuff, but all that's on YouTube. If you wanted to see some of those old ones, old episodes, but that's how I got started, just getting used to the functionality. And then I switched to StreamYard and decided to go to my Facebook public page instead of to my group, because I know that if I want to gain audience and get people to be able to share it and see it, that's what I would have to do, which was a little more nerve-wracking because everyone could see it and it's less forgiving. But I did that, and I brought someone on with the new concept of I'd like to just talk to people about their marketing problems and provide a few answers there in a way that might be interesting. So I brought some people from the Facebook group and asked them, hey, can you ask a couple of your questions on the show? So it wasn't complete strangers. And that's why I did these first few episodes. Is we talked about their challenges, and I tried to prepare a couple slides so that you'd have some visual stimulation from like a PowerPoint picture or something like that. And that's how I got going. And then once I had that working, of course, the first time I go live, apparently like the audio settings, if you're using a really nice mic and you don't disable the processing, it kind of messes with your voice. So my very first episode live to the public, not to the group, but to the public, totally lowered my voice pitch down to where I sounded like I was at half speed, basically, like really deep voice, at speaking at the same speed, but at the really, really low voice as if I was slowed down, which was really difficult to listen to. But I hope that didn't drive some people away. But that was, the first kind of what I was doing with live streaming. But again, the goal there was to say, okay, let me bring people on, see if I could help them provide some advice and do two things. I mean, the first goal was to share those tips and tricks that I was giving one-on-one to a more broad audience in a way that could scale. And then, because you get asked the same questions over and over again. So I wanted to do it in a way that I could just put it out there. But the second it was a proof of concept, right? If I'm out here trying to run a coaching business, I'd rather have my testimonial be you actually seeing me do the work live. So I thought, why don't I do that in the Facebook live setting? And here's, in terms of behind the scenes, here's the challenges with that. When you start taking people on and answering their questions live, then you have a little less control of what's going to happen. You don't get to edit. You don't get to, cut things out, and you have to go with the flow of the conversation, which some of the time these calls go an hour or an hour and a half. And, a lot of that's just them giving me background around what's going on with their business. So that would slow things down a little bit. Because I really wanted to actually help them with those things. But the other thing is it's hard to to get people to want to sign in at the exact right time, if you're trying to run a show that's on at a consistent time, it's hard to get guests that work for that schedule. Most of the time I have calls scheduled at all kinds of random hours at different days of the week. And, the thing that they tell you to do to make live streaming work is to have something consistent that people can count on. So I said, okay, Wednesdays at 1 p Pacific is when I'll go live every week. But I've had trouble with that. I've had trouble getting people to want to sign in at that time and be ready because maybe their schedules don't work with that. So getting all the guests for that is difficult. So I'd rather actually, set up calls like I normally do and just go live at random times throughout the week. So that's something I'm trying to figure out, and I haven't cracked the code on that, but maybe I'll still go live at a regular time that you can count on. I'll do stuff like this that maybe it's just one-on-one, or maybe it's not. And then I'll still maybe do random stuff throughout the week, and I'll let you know as soon as I can when it's coming and promote it to you, because I've heard some best practices on that too. And just shout out, by the way, I've been not learning this on my own. I've been out there, reading, listening, watching content from people who are doing this all the time, people that have been generous enough to share what they're doing, people in the StreamYard community, which is the tool that I'm using to broadcast today, that have been really generous with their time. People like Stephanie Liu, who is a creator and a live broadcaster who's got a show called Lights Camera Live, who's been awesome and has always great tips and tricks and has been a guest on the podcast. So obviously I'm not the only one out there doing this. I'm actually late to the game, but if you didn't start 10 years ago, the next best time to start's now. And that's the mentality I go into it with. And, but I thought it'd be fair to share with you guys like what's actually happening, like what the struggles are. And that's part of it. So part of it is figuring out the actual structure of the show. And even if I had these ideas, I keep changing it because as I run into challenges, I'm like, okay, let's pivot it. So it might be jarring to the audience because you don't know what to expect. But that's the reality of going live. So you maybe ask, like, why subject myself to this? But I think part of it is, I think the value of learning something like this is more important than the value and the struggle of not being consistent. So hope you guys kind of roll with me on that. And I'm seeing that I can't see comments on this phone right now, so I'm going to go inside, check the computer, because I think you can only see them as the host, which kind of makes sense. But I want to do that real quick to make sure I'm not neglecting any of you guys. Looks like we're doing okay. But if you guys have comments, feel free to type them in. Type in hashtag live so I know you're watching. And you might be watching from a different player entirely. So I understand that might not always work out the best for everyone. So sorry if I ignore you guys in the comments because I don't get to see them if I'm kind of running around on the phone here, but I'll make sure to respond to anyone, definitely at very, very least after the show, so that you know that I'm paying attention. I want to be engaging with you guys. So apologies if I miss anyone in terms of that. So I'm actually going to take you guys on a walk right now and get into some of the other stuff behind the personal branding and all that stuff. So for me, one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about is this idea of personal branding. Like, why did I get on this, started on this crazy journey to begin with? And the funny thing about that is, hopefully the light's not going to be too crazy. The funny thing is, I was, working at a pretty cush job in advertising. I worked at ad agencies for 17 years, and after doing it for that long, I had a job that I was pretty happy with. But what I could see is that at the end of the day, I thought, in probably 5 to 10 years, I might have trouble finding a job just because as you age up, there's less and less positions. And I realized that I'd been building a pretty legitimate resume, but I was worried that there was no reputation behind it that lived outside of the corporations I was working for. So that was really the crux of me deciding to leave while I still had a chance to do something a little bit more interesting. So, I wanted the opportunity to get out there and, whether it was through speaking engagements or through writing, I thought, maybe I'll write a book or something like that. or through just creating content, writing articles, giving my opinion and writing thought leader pieces. I thought, maybe I'll get out there and at least try to build something that's mine. And, I delayed and had that idea for years and years. And then finally, just through the support of my family and my wife, said, this is the year to do it. So that's what kind of kicked me off on this journey. And this idea that being relevant in my industry and in my job and creating something that has impact to be more than just something that brings me income each week was an interesting part of this journey. And I finally was investing myself. I went out there and I was taking courses and I was reading more, listening to podcasts, actually learning how to network and actually networking, and then going to events, like actually going to the events that I always told myself I wanted to go to. And through this, I met some amazing people and really, started this journey of actually building a personal brand the right way. Well, I don't want to make it sound like I know the secret, because it's still a struggle. But what I mean is actually taking time to invest in me. And I think we all deserve that, right? So that's, the first thing was, starting to do that. But the real behind the scenes of all that is that doesn't exactly pay the bills, building content or creating content doesn't pay the bills, not when you're starting. And everyone, basically preaches the idea of patience, and that's been huge. I've obviously had to figure out how to continue to maintain confidence and stay true to this idea, this thing that I'm chasing. And that's been made easier by having, a family that's supporting me on this crazy adventure. But that patience has been, something that's been hard to come by every day, especially when you're trying to figure out how to make money as an entrepreneur, and a content creator. So yeah, it doesn't pay the bills. So I've, been figuring out through like coaching and whatever else, what are ways to figure out how I can actually help other people and, turn what I do into, something I can give to other people in a coaching type way. So I've been working on that, and I've changed that multiple times. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I want to set the example. I feel like there's so many people that I know that, like me, were basically asleep at the wheel. You find something safe that your job or whatever it is, and you're like, I can do this. Like this will be fine. This will keep me like in the house that I'm in. It'll keep my food on the table and my family happy and in their school and whatever else. But while you're sitting there and doing what's safe, you're not exactly growing. And to grow, you need to challenge yourself. You need to take risks. You need to put yourself into new environments. And I wasn't doing that. And yes, you can do that probably while you're still in a corporate environment or whatever else, but I wasn't. Because when I was working, I'd work 40, 50, 60 hours a week sometimes. And when you get home, you're tired and you just want to spend that little bit of time you have left with your family and, taking a break and all that. So it's hard to find that motivation. So that's the reality of it. That's what was going on with the personal branding stuff. And super happy I did it. Like, obviously, I think the rewards have been awesome in terms of just like confidence and feeling like I've done things that I've never done before, establishing a reputation, starting to see some traction in terms of the relationships I'm building, just the confidence in terms of creating content, feeling like I can do it and finding new ways to create and contribute, just all things that I, didn't know I had in me until I started to do them. So that was awesome. And then, in doing that, I had to figure out like, what's my road here? So I'm creating some content. What do I actually want to do well? Because as they say, if you want to basically be great, you have to do something great. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything great. I was just doing. So I had to kind of work towards that. And this idea. My buddy Travis, who has an amazing podcast, you guys should check that out. It's called Build Your Network Podcast. He's in one of his posts surfaced Steve Martin's quote, which is, be so good that they can't ignore you, which is an awesome quote. I'm like, damn, how do you do that? So this idea of just trying to do things and getting better at them so that eventually those incremental, wins will get me a little bit closer to being good and then hopefully great at some point in the future. That's the focus. That's the path right now. And with podcasting, that's what it was like. I tried to do it on my own and get practice at it. And it was a rough going learning that. But then I hired a coach after I felt like I got my feet wet. And then because I took that plunge, I feel like I have a pretty decent podcast. That's Brands on Brands on Brands. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. That's my promo for the day. So, I feel like I built a pretty decent show. But in the process, like whether the show is good or great or average or mediocre, like the benefits have been that I've been meeting just the most amazing people. Like my network has completely changed. I've talked to some of the top thought leaders in marketing that I used to just read their books and see their videos. I never even thought I'd actually get to talk to them for an hour and ask them my questions. And in some cases, actually start relationships with them where, I feel like we are at very least more than acquaintances, and that's kind of cool. That's one of the benefits that's really helped me continue to have the confidence is seeing those relationships grow. And then, with behind the scenes of that is, you build a podcast and you put all this work into it, and it's, it's not the easiest thing in the world if you want to do it well. Then you got to sustain like 3 episodes a week. Man, that's a lot of work. And my wife says that's a full-time job. So editing it and recording it and promoting it especially is a full-time job. And sorry if the wind is loud for you guys. But being that it's a full-time job, I've tried outsourcing the editing, and I did that for a little bit, but man, that's expensive. And if you're not killing it in the business behind the content creation, who's got money to pay for that? So I've taken some of that back in-house until I can legitimately form, a consistent kind of flow of income. And that's where I'm at with that right now. I want to make sure I keep the show going because I love it. And I think it's, I'm having faith in the process that might be a 1 or 2 year commitment there. But, I might have to change the frequency of episodes. We'll see. But if I had to tell anyone else, if you had to start a personal brand today, what's the best way to do it? Everyone's got their opinions. I'd say podcasting. And even though I'm live streaming to you right now, the reason I'd say that is this is way harder than that, to be honest. Podcasting I can do in my living room. I could set up all the calls and interview times in advance. I can do all the guest reach out. I can get people to sign up. I can do a show and an interview with them. And then I can edit it later. I can actually go back and cut out the stuff that wasn't as good if I'm getting used to producing for the first time. And that option to actually edit, I think, is what makes it less daunting. And it's easier than blogging because you don't actually have to write anything. You can just interview someone else and let that happen naturally. Because I think we're all naturally curious. We know how to have conversations. We know how to talk to other people. That's a more natural way for us to communicate than writing is sometimes. So if I had to start, if I had to tell anyone else where to start, it would be podcasting. Because it's the easiest way to create dynamic, interesting content as quickly as possible. And speed might be the name of the game here in terms of you getting started and you feel like you're behind. You might need to find a way to get going a little bit quicker than just trying to do everything or picking something that's really hard, like creating a YouTube channel or something like that, which, long term might be valuable. But I think the gateway to all of that, the gateway to a live stream, the gateway to a YouTube show, the gateway to a really good blog might be podcasting. It might be starting with something that comes more naturally and more easily that you can then convert. And then, that's the path that's worked for me. And just I've seen it be something that really anyone can do. So I hope that example is something you guys can follow. But I'd say you do have to put the time in, like really focus on making the podcast good. And maybe you get started and don't make it good at the beginning because you just want to get started. And I think I can teach you guys that. I think that's something that's coming up. So if I talk about coaching and behind the scenes on that, I think the idea of creating a first podcast that is going to be bad. I don't know what you mean one episode. I mean an actual like multi-episode podcast that's going to be bad so that you get the practice of creating a podcast might be part of what we all need. Like if I was doing this again and was looking for someone to teach me how to build a personal brand, I might look for like the easiest way to create my first podcast episodes and to get it out there and up and running so that all that barrier to entry is removed. So I think that's something that I'm looking at going to be adding to my coaching is finding people that want to launch their first personal brand work, or they want to get some opinion pieces out there and help them launch their very first podcast. Because there's a theme there. When I got out of the advertising agencies and working with entrepreneurs one-on-one, I said, you know what I want to help people do is build their first marketing strategy. And that was a major endeavor because a full marketing strategy is just like hours and hours and hours of education, and still hard to then see people successfully implement that. So, I thought, I need to focus down a little bit to give people that something like more bite size. And then I was starting to resonate more with people that are building personal brands. And the thing that's really caught my attention is this idea of helping people build their personal brand for the first time by recording their first podcast, by doing their first live stream, by writing their first blog. I think that's something I can uniquely help them learn. So what I'm committing to in this process is figuring out what are the tools I can create, the resources, and the example, so that I can pass it down to other people, because I've been helped so much by the people who've come before me that I realize I can do that for other people. So you'll see me starting to create more and more tools and templates and resources and sharing all that. I did create a page. It is light at best, but that's how you start, right? That page has resources. It's at brandonbrands.com/resources. No surprise there. And it's my downloadable templates. And yes, they all have email opt-ins because that's what this is about. But I didn't create them for that. I created them as I learned something to pass it on to other people. But that's my focus. I'm going to be doing more in-depth versions of that and sharing that out with everyone so that you guys have that. And hopefully that's the kind of thing that brings you into my community. It's the kind of thing that as you are starting to learn and grow and wanting to invest in yourself, and you're looking for someone to teach you who's learned from other people that have just been awesome at it, that you look to me and say, you know what, here's a guy who's genuinely trying to help us. And that means you come into the website and check things out, or you come into the Facebook group, the Brand Growth Community, and you participate and you engage and you ask your questions. And together we work that out. We figure out how we can help you on your journey. I'd love to be able to impact people and see them build their reputation for the first time outside of a resume, or someone who's been working on a company but decides that they don't want a company, they want a brand. And I can help them build their first brand that's beyond a logo and a storefront. That's amazing to me. That's exciting to me. So that's the behind the scenes on that. That's me figuring out my coaching program and what it really takes. Because I'll be honest, I've struggled. I've offered VIP days on very tactical things like email marketing and just been afraid to sell it. I've offered 6-week coaching programs on marketing strategy and been slow to pull the trigger because I didn't want to sell something that I didn't want to be doing forever. So getting through my own hangups on that. And of course, every time I sell something and I do it, I make sure that when I'm executing, I over deliver 150%. So I'm building these amazing programs, but I'm not actually selling them to anybody, which is kind of funny. But I think it's one of those things that I don't want to do things for too long if I know that it's not exactly my path. So that's the real. I said I was going behind the scenes, telling you things I'm not supposed to tell you. That's the real. That's what's going on with me and the coaching program. So that'll be changing. I think you'll see me focusing on podcasting for a little bit, but that might switch from podcasting to live streaming to whatever you guys need. But right now, I'm going to lean into that for a little bit because I think I can actually get a lot of people to move on doing something for the first time if hopefully they can see that there's a really easy way to do it that's not intimidating. So I'm building that for you guys. Feel free to continue to follow me and listen. And if you join the brand growth community, that's brandonbrands.com/FB for Facebook. If you join me there, you'll get to see all the journey as it goes. And I think that's the main thing in terms of behind the scenes for the coaching program is figuring out how I can continue to help people and build and bring more people in. The last thing I'd promise you guys was a little bit behind the scenes on Facebook. So I, realized, every couple months is a new epiphany. First it was, I need to create content to build a reputation. Then it was, I need to build a platform to put that content on, like a podcast. And then it was, I need to build community so that the work that I do brings people together and then I have a place to actually engage with them and have it be in community with them so we can learn from each other. And then that grows also the word of mouth of it. And then I try to get a little more diligent about my coaching program and what I'm actually offering. And now I've been focused on, okay, how do I build more discovery? And that's been development of a consistent email marketing program, lead magnets, in other words, providing valuable things that I can exchange information for, and things like that. Oh, back home here. I'm going to take 1 second to get the door open. There we go. And then after all that, the next thing was, okay, how do I go ahead and run some Facebook ads to generate discovery that way to people that aren't going to find me as quickly? I'd already built some new people into my world through the content, through networking and things like that. But I figured, how do I actually get them to participate in a way that would bring strangers into me, basically, people that don't know me, that would be a cold lead. So that I figured I would do through Facebook ads. So let me switch you guys to the other camera to see if this thing is still working. And this will be a fun little test here. Add to stream. Oh my God, there's two of me. All right, let me bring this other one out.
Switch earbuds. Hopefully you guys are still with me and this hasn't been completely excruciating for you. All right. So anyway, so back to the Facebook ads. So the thing with the Facebook ads is I initially ran some, promoting my content and saying, okay, what can I do with my content that will get people to see it? So I'd run ads that just promoted, boosted, or actual promotions of the content. Then I switched to promoting my lead magnets and that kind of thing. And I even ran some that were about my personal brand. And what's funny about that is one of the first ones I did said, it has a big picture of me when I was speaking to a college, and I wrote the word irrelevant across the top of it. And on another one I wrote ghost. And it was based on a post that I had done on LinkedIn that said, man, like after 17 years in advertising, at the age of 39, heading towards 40, I felt like I was completely irrelevant online, and basically a ghost in terms of my reputation. And that wasn't to say that I now think I'm, amazing or anything like that. It was to say I realized that I hadn't been investing in myself. And to me, developing a reputation outside of your resume is important, like I've said at the beginning of this. And I didn't think I had done that. So it was a realization and a call to myself to do that. And then now looking back at it, if I had to show that to someone to say, I get it, you might feel the same way, that you are just a resume, but you are so much more than that inside, and you have ambitions, and you want to grow, and you want to challenge yourself. And that might be through building something that you don't know what it's going to be yet. So maybe starting to invest in yourself. I'm like, I'll put it out there, call myself that, and tell my story and say, you can do it too. And of course, I got some haters on the ad that were, mostly it was fine, a good response. Of course, there's a few people that are like still irrelevant and things like that. I'm like, fine, talk trash. You can do what you want to do. Uh, but at the end of the day, I was happy I did it. I may not run ads anymore that kind of self-deprecate on myself, because I don't want that to be the image I portray to people. But I thought it was interesting to see if I could get people that would relate to that story. So I did that a little bit, and that actually brought people in. And the idea was to say, here's my story, and here's some tools to get you started building your first content if you've never built content before. And it was a couple of the guides I have. And I think a few people found that useful, so I'm glad I did it. And now I ran a few ads against this live stream. The first few episodes I put out, I ran some ads, and a few thousand people watched the video, which was awesome. But I had to pay for that traffic, and it's not traffic that's turning into business yet. Obviously, that might happen over time. But if I don't promote the show, then suddenly, it's like 4 people or whatever it is that tune in. And that's, there's just massive ebb and flow there because, obviously Facebook wants you to run ads. But generating an audience is critical. So, I'm figuring out like what that audience should be. And what the ad said was, here I have the show where I answer your top marketing questions. Go ahead and register and ask me your questions. I'll bring you on the show. But the problem I have with that is once I got the forms filled, people filled the forms out and sent it to me. The questions they would ask were either partially filled in or just a couple letters, people typing things in just to fill the form out and get the freebie. Or actually, I don't think there was a freebie. They just filled the form out to see what would happen, I think. Or they'd ask a question, but it would be like very cut short and not really in depth, so I didn't get any background on the question. So that was a bit of a flop because I didn't get to see anyone that I could really help in that. So that didn't work. And I thought maybe it's because they're not paying for this. So I just put out another ad out, which I'm sure I'll get criticized for, which said, do you want me to coach you live for 30 minutes? How about you pay me $1 a minute for that? And I will give you the money back if at the end of it you feel like I didn't answer your question. Like, no risk there, right? That's obviously going to make me look greedy, but the idea behind it was if you don't charge for the work you do, then people won't see the value in it. People only see value in things that they pay for, and they only chase the things that run away from them. And I learned that from Oren Claff, who was a guest on the podcast, who was just an amazing mind in terms of selling and pitching and that kind of stuff. And it resonated with me. I'm like, I get it. I get what you're saying. So I've ranted enough about that, but just to let you know, I've changed the show, like seeing like what are the different formats that might work for this. And I might just bring it back to being something where I bring people who have influence or who are doing things on that want to talk about what they're doing, because they tend to be more motivated to actually come onto a show because they have something to promote. Whereas someone who's just trying to solve their own problems doesn't always have the confidence to want to ask those questions live on a show like this. So the format might continue to change. We'll see. It just depends on how much attention we can get from the people who are watching. And Kevin, I'm back on my computer. I see you, man. Thank you for checking in. I appreciate you chiming in and leaving comments, man. And yes, when you pay attention. It's true. It's true. The things you pay for, you value. So that's where this all went. So if you're wondering like why this is changing and going back and forth and why sometimes I have a guest, sometimes I don't, it's because the guests that I was getting requests from, I couldn't validate in a way that I felt confident bringing them on the show. And then the rest of it is timing. Like people that actually I talk to on a daily basis for coaching, it doesn't always line up, and I don't want to necessarily bring them on because the coaching call would change sometimes. I won't give them the space they need to actually talk about the things they want to talk about in their business. So I don't want to do that and limit the growth there for them. So this will change. That's the behind the scenes on that. And I think we're at 40 minutes here, so I want to make sure I give you guys the time back and I'm not totally killing you on watching, but appreciate you guys taking a walk with me. I don't know how that sounded, so when I watch it back, I'm sure I'll use some apologies on the video quality, how dark it was, how light it was, the sound with the wind and whatever else. But like I said, today was going to be weird, but I hope you guys got to see a little bit about like what's going on in my head behind the scenes. And as I'm moving on this journey, moving forward, I'm going to continue to tell you guys what's really going on and what else I could be doing to bring you guys forward and give you confidence to be doing the same thing. So hope you guys found value in that. I'll catch you guys next time. Hopefully we'll have a show again Wednesday, but we'll see what it looks like. All right, that's brandgrowthlive.com. Catch you guys next time. If you're watching on replay, type in hashtag replay. I appreciate that too. And I'll see you on the other side.
Brandon Brand.